For years, Matt Lauer was the trusted face millions of Americans welcomed into their homes every morning. Then, almost overnight, everything collapsed. One complaint led to a stunning firing, more allegations followed, and one of television's biggest careers came to an abrupt end. But what really happened behind the scenes? And after disappearing from the spotlight, what has Matt Lauer's life looked like ever since? For millions of Americans, waking up meant turning on the Today Show. And for more than 2 decades, one face became almost impossible to separate from morning television: Matt Lauer. Calm, confident, and quick with a smile, Lauer built a reputation as one of the most respected broadcasters in the country. Whether he was interviewing presidents, Hollywood stars, Olympic champions, or everyday people with extraordinary stories, he seemed to have a natural ability to make conversations feel personal. To viewers, he wasn't just a news anchor. He felt like someone they knew. But long before he became one of NBC's biggest stars, Matt Lauer's journey began far from the bright lights of New York City. Born in New York on December 30th, 1957, Lauer developed an early interest in media and communication. He attended Ohio University, where he studied television production. Although he left school before graduating, he quickly found work behind the scenes at local television stations. It wasn't glamorous, but it gave him something even more valuable: experience. Over the next several years, he worked his way through local news markets, learning every part of the business. His steady voice, sharp interviewing skills, and professional attitude helped him stand out. Producers noticed that he remained calm under pressure, a quality that would later become one of his trademarks. Everything changed in the early 1990s when NBC gave him bigger opportunities. He joined the network and soon became a familiar face on the Today Show. In 1997, after Bryant Gumbel left, Lauer was named co-anchor alongside Katie Couric. The pairing became one of the most successful in television history. Morning after morning, millions of viewers tuned in. Ratings stayed strong, and Lauer became one of the highest-paid personalities in broadcast news. His interviews often made headlines, and world leaders, actors, musicians, and athletes all wanted a seat across from him. From the outside, it looked like he had achieved everything: a successful career, a respected public image, a place at the very top of television journalism. But success often hides stories that cameras never capture. Behind the polished studio lights and carefully prepared broadcasts, rumors occasionally surfaced about Lauer's behavior behind closed doors. At the time, they remained largely out of public view, and his career continued without interruption. Here's something to think about. Do you believe fame changes people, or does it simply reveal who they already are? Share your thoughts in the comments below. For years, the public saw only the polished professional. Few imagined that everything could change in a single morning. And when that morning finally arrived, it sent shockwaves through NBC, the media industry, and millions of viewers who thought they knew Matt Lauer. On the morning of November 29, 2017, viewers switched on the Today Show expecting another ordinary broadcast. Instead, they witnessed one of the most shocking moments in television history. Co-hosts Savannah Guthrie and Hoda Kotb appeared on screen with serious expressions. Guthrie began reading a statement from NBC News chairman Andrew Lack. Matt Lauer had been fired. The decision had been made the night before, after NBC received what it described as a detailed complaint from a colleague about inappropriate sexual behavior in the workplace. According to the network, the complaint suggested misconduct had occurred during the 2014 Sochi Olympics. After reviewing the information, NBC said it had reason to believe the incident may not have been an isolated incident. For viewers, it was almost impossible to believe. Just one day earlier, Lauer had been on television as usual, interviewing guests and delivering the morning news. Less than 24 hours later, his career at NBC, built over more than 20 years, was over. The speed of the decision surprised many people. There was no long investigation played out in public. No farewell. No final broadcast. One moment, he was one of the most recognizable journalists in America. The next, he was gone. Soon after the announcement, Matt Lauer released a written statement. He said there were no words to express his sorrow and regret for the pain he had caused others. He also stated that while some of what was being said about him was untrue or mischaracterized, there was enough truth in these stories to make me feel embarrassed and ashamed. Those words quickly became one of the most discussed statements of the #MeToo era. But they also raised new questions. If there was enough truth, how much had really happened behind the scenes? And how had it remained hidden for so long? As journalists began investigating, former employees and media insiders started sharing their own experiences. Some described a workplace where rumors about Lauer had circulated for years. Others questioned whether executives should have recognized warning signs sooner. NBC has said that company leaders were not aware of the specific misconduct before the complaint that led to his dismissal. However, that explanation became the subject of intense public debate as additional reports emerged. The story was no longer just about one television host. It had become part of a much larger national conversation about workplace power accountability and whether influential people had been protected for too long. At the center of it all stood Matt Lauer, a man whose carefully built public image had unraveled in less than a day. But the biggest revelations were still to come. As more women spoke publicly and new reports surfaced, the picture became even more complicated, changing how many people viewed one of television's most familiar faces. If you enjoy discovering the untold stories behind famous people, subscribe, because these are the stories most people never hear. Matt Lauer's firing was only the beginning. In the days and weeks that followed, more women came forward with allegations about his behavior during his years at NBC. Their accounts were reported by major news organizations, adding new details to a story that was growing larger by the day. Some women described uncomfortable workplace interactions. Others alleged inappropriate sexual conduct and said they felt powerless because of Lauer's position at one of the country's biggest television networks. Several of the allegations dated back years, leading many to ask the same question. How had one of the most famous men in television managed to keep these accusations out of public view for so long? The timing made the story even more significant. America was in the middle of the #MeToo movement, as women across many industries began speaking publicly about harassment and abuse of power. Powerful figures in entertainment, media, politics, and business were facing long overdue scrutiny. Matt Lauer's downfall quickly became one of the movement's biggest headlines. Then, in 2019, journalist Ronan Farrow published Catch and Kill. The book included additional allegations against Lauer and explored questions about how media organizations handled complaints involving influential employees. NBC strongly disputed some of the book's conclusions and defended its handling of the situation, while public debate continued. Lauer, meanwhile, largely stayed out of the spotlight. Unlike many public figures, he did not embark on a media tour to defend himself. He gave no television interviews. There were no lengthy public appearances attempting to rebuild his image. Instead, he remained mostly silent. Reports suggested he spent much of his time at his properties in the Hamptons and New Zealand, away from the cameras that had once defined his life. His personal life was also changing dramatically. His marriage to Dutch model Annette Roque had already faced public challenges. Following the scandal, the couple finalized their divorce in 2019 after more than 2 decades together. By then, the family was focused on moving forward privately, especially for the sake of their children. For someone who had spent decades asking other people difficult questions, Lauer was now the subject of endless questions himself. Could his reputation ever recover? Would anyone in television hire him again? Or was this the permanent end of one of broadcasting's biggest careers? Opinions remained deeply divided. Some believed his apology showed at least some acknowledgement of wrongdoing. Others argued that the allegations had permanently changed how his career should be remembered. Whatever people believed, one fact was impossible to ignore. The trusted morning host who had interviewed presidents, celebrities, and world leaders was no longer known primarily for journalism. His name had become linked to one of the most dramatic falls from grace in modern television history. If you enjoy uncovering the stories behind the headlines, subscribe now. We explore the moments that shaped famous lives, the triumphs, the controversies, and everything in between. Yet, even after disappearing from television, Matt Lauer didn't completely disappear. Away from studio lights and live broadcasts, he was trying to build a very different life, one few people ever got to see. When someone spends more than 20 years in front of millions of viewers, disappearing isn't easy. But that's exactly what Matt Lauer tried to do. After leaving NBC, he stepped away from the public eye almost completely. The television studios, red carpets, and major interviews that had once been part of his daily life were replaced by a much quieter routine. Most reports suggested he divided his time between his home in the Hamptons and his ranch in New Zealand, where he had owned property for years. Friends described him as living privately, focusing on family, close relationships, and staying out of the headlines whenever possible. Occasionally, photographers captured him running errands, attending local events, or spending time with friends. Each new photo sparked fresh media coverage. People were still curious, not because he was making a comeback, but because they wanted to know whether one of television's biggest stars would ever return. Over the years, rumors of a possible comeback appeared from time to time. Some reports claimed Lauer was considering new projects. Others suggested friends believed he deserved another chance. But no major television network announced plans to bring him back, and Lauer himself never publicly launched a serious effort to return to broadcasting. The industry had changed. The #MeToo movement had reshaped expectations across newsrooms and entertainment companies. Networks placed greater emphasis on workplace culture, reporting procedures, and accountability. In many ways, Matt Lauer's story became part of that larger transformation. His career wasn't simply interrupted. It became a symbol of how quickly decades of success could be overshadowed when serious allegations emerged. Meanwhile, many of his former colleagues continued building their own careers. Savannah Guthrie and Hoda Kotb became the permanent faces of today. NBC moved forward, creating a new chapter without one of its longest-serving anchors. Life, both for the network and its audience, continued. For Lauer, however, the spotlight never completely faded. Every few months, another headline would appear. A rare public sighting, a report about his personal life, a rumored relationship, speculation about whether he regretted staying silent. Yet through it all, he rarely responded publicly. That silence left many questions unanswered. Was it an effort to protect his privacy, a decision to avoid reopening old wounds, or simply an acceptance that some chapters of life cannot be rewritten? No one outside his closest circle truly knows. One thing, however, is clear. The image that once defined Matt Lauer, the confident morning host greeting America each day, belongs to another era. Today, his story is remembered very differently, and perhaps that's what makes it so powerful. Success can take decades to build. Trust can disappear in a single moment. Everyone faces moments when life changes in ways they never expected. Have you ever had to rebuild after a major setback? Share your experience in the comments. You never know who your story might encourage. As Matt Lauer settled into a life far from the cameras, one final question remained. How should history remember him? As one of the greatest broadcasters of his generation, or as a cautionary tale about power, accountability, and the lasting consequences of personal choices? That question continues to shape his legacy even today. For more than 2 decades, Matt Lauer represented stability. Every weekday morning, millions of people trusted him to deliver the news. He interviewed world leaders, covered historic events, and became one of the highest-paid and most influential figures in American television. If someone had predicted in 2016 that his career would end almost overnight, very few would have believed it. Yet history often turns on moments no one sees coming. Today, Matt Lauer's story is no longer viewed simply as the rise of a successful broadcaster. It has become a reminder of how reputation, influence, and public trust are closely connected, and how quickly they can be lost. His professional achievements remain part of television history. He helped shape morning news for a generation, conducted memorable interviews, and played a major role in NBC's success. But those accomplishments now exist alongside the misconduct allegations that ended his career. For many people, separating the two is impossible. His downfall also marked a turning point for the media industry. News organizations began reviewing workplace policies more carefully. Employees were encouraged to report misconduct, and companies faced increasing pressure to create safer working environments. The conversations sparked during that period continue today, influencing how organizations respond to complaints involving powerful individuals. Matt Lauer's story became one chapter in a much larger movement, one that changed the culture of television, journalism, and many other industries. Whether he will ever return to public life remains uncertain. Years have passed since his dismissal, yet he has remained largely out of the spotlight. There have been occasional headlines and public sightings, but nothing close to the career he once had. Perhaps that silence says more than any interview ever could. The cameras moved on. The headlines faded. But the questions surrounding his legacy remain. Should people remember the decades of professional success? Or should they focus on the actions that brought that success to an abrupt end? Each viewer will answer that differently. What is certain is this: Matt Lauer's journey serves as a powerful reminder that fame is never permanent, trust is difficult to earn, and accountability can reshape even the most extraordinary careers. Thank you for watching. If this documentary gave you a new perspective on one of television's most dramatic downfalls, let us know your thoughts below. And if you enjoy exploring the untold stories behind the world's biggest celebrities, don't forget to subscribe for more documentaries like this. But Matt Lauer's story is only one of many remarkable rises and dramatic falls in the world of fame. Another celebrity's hidden journey may surprise you even more, and that's the story we'll uncover next.